Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Reviews with Tyberius D. Of course, you know who I am, or at least I hope you do. I do apologize for the last episode, that inaugural episode. We've been working on my sound settings the last couple of times, and we should be good right now. We'll double check to see if we have any more echoes. But I definitely know that it wasn't quite up to snuff of what we usually do. But of course, today we're going to be talking about the Star Trek movies to kind of balance out what we were doing last time with the Star Wars movies. Now, I am personally a fan of both universes. Now, granted, there's a lot of details there with the Star Wars expanded universe and the Star Trek expanded universe and, you know, alternate timelines and all this other nonsense. But I actually enjoy a lot of sci-fi, and Star Trek is one of them. In fact, I have very fond memories of watching The Next Generation with my father growing up as a kid, you know, and especially with DS9 being on the air and then later on Voyager. I definitely remember these more or less fondly. And of course now all the bugs want to show up. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the Star Trek movies. There is 13 of them right now, at least if we're talking about like all the major movies. Some of them are definitely better than others. Some of them are absolute garbage. Some of them are pretty good. But I'm going to give the hot take straight out of the gate. None of these movies are that great. That good, that great. It's kind of sad. Let's just start hitting it through, because some of them are just absolute garbage. Some of them are like, I'm not gonna say diamonds in the rough, but they're definitely like gold among the trap. But the first one is Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I'm pretty sure it's like in 1984, 85, something like that. It's pretty early, and it's largely as a response to Star Wars, actually. Leonard Nimoy used to joke before he died that when he saw Star Wars, he knew he was going to get a call from Paramount soon after. And turned out he was right. So, basically, long and the short of this is that the motion picture is... it kind of sucks. It's really bad, actually. The story's not terrible. It's the part of the cinematography. Part of it is the plot. But it's definitely more of just... It's how the movie paces itself that really is the problem here. So to break this down into for what I think and how I think it is that it's been a long time since I've seen this, but what I remember is that it was incredibly campy, and it was incredibly slow, and it's good for its time, it's good for its time visually, and it's also the plot really hit and misses. Kirk's an admiral. He's kind of just come back, and he's, you know, basically thrust out. I don't remember if he's thrust out of retirement, or basically it's supposed to be one last hurrah for the Enterprise crew. If I remember right, they like break it out of mothballs, and they're sent off to stop this giant probe that's heading for Earth. And there's quite a bit that involves around that, but I don't remember the characters having a lot of plot progression in this. It's largely just, you know, go stop the Doomsday Machine, which isn't really a Doomsday Machine. There's a nice little thing, homage to Voyager, where it's a Voyager 6 probe at the end, and basically somehow a race of machines built a giant space station for one of our probes to kind of come back home. And there's a lot of theories revolved around that, but it's been a while. But what I distinctly remember about this movie is that it was incredibly slow, and to kind of put this in perspective, there's one scene where they're literally like, oh, hey, it's the Enterprise, and they're literally just like flying around it for like 10 minutes. It's really ridiculous, honestly, and it's unfortunate, but yeah, the first outing isn't really that good. I'm actually surprised they did multiple movies, but apparently somebody liked it. But let's get into one of the better pieces of the Star Trek movies. Let's talk about movie number 2, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Cinematography is pretty good, especially for that time. The Genesis weapon and the Genesis device, it's kind of, you know, a weapon. But anyway, the Genesis device actually has some really good CGI rendering for the time. I'm thinking this is like 1984 or 1985, because it's just literally like right after the motion picture. For the time, it looks good. There's a few things that really bother me about it, like the battle in the nebula where Kirk and Khan are facing off, and literally the ships are like right in front of each other, and you can tell and they're just acting like, oh, I can't see them. Oh, I'm waiting. That didn't go over for me very well, but, they did with what they could at the time. Ricardo, basically the plot is that one of the mortal enemies of Captain Kirk is Khan Noonien Singh. He comes back, and he's basically out for revenge. He hijacks a Miranda-class cruiser, goes about, screwing with the galaxy. A lot of things happen here. You find out that Kirk has a kid. If I remember right, this is the movie where the Kobayashi Maru test opens up with. It's been a quick minute since I've seen this one, but it's actually one of the better ones. The plot is generally pretty solid. Khan's basically out for revenge, and you get him, but you kind of have to know the original episode in the show to get that. But let's see. Kirk goes through some stuff, having what was it? It's the nurse in the new movies, but she was a doctor back then. It wasn't Nurse Chapel. I can't remember who it was. I apologize. But he finds out he has a kid, and kind of starts to get to know him. There's things that happen. I don't want to overly spoil the plot of the movie, but it's not bad. It actually, I like it a lot, and again, I like my bad moments because it shows the gravity of situations and why some things are really worth watching. Spock dies at the end of it, right? Spock has to sacrifice himself to save the Enterprise because something, I can't remember, something was wrong with the reactor. He has to go into the radiation chamber, and it's the whole, he dies at the end, and that's it's really good. There's something lost. It has a nice homage to Spock at the end of it. I can't remember where the song that's played at the end, but I remember the tune. And it's good times. It's good times had all around. Sorry, that sounds morbid as hell. It's a good movie in that things do happen. There is consequences to be paid. It's not just a victory that is without cost. Just plot element happens. Probably getting into Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock. I'm not gonna say it's a great movie. I'm not gonna say it's a good movie. I'm hard pressed to say it's a decent movie, but I'm pretty sure it's actually one of the best ones of the odd numbered Star Treks, because the odd number ones are usually terrible. The plot is basically that they're going to go to the Genesis planet, and if I remember right, they find out Spock. Yeah, they find out Spock is alive from the beginning of the movie, and basically Captain Kirk and company go steal the Enterprise and run off. And then bad things happen, where the Enterprise actually gets hijacked by Klingons and then is destroyed, and a whole bunch of stuff happens, and they end up taking control of a bird of prey. It's not terrible. Again, it's been a while since I've seen some of these movies more than others, but it's not horrible. It addresses quite a bit about how Kirk is feeling. Basically, just like he lost his kid in the last movie, and now he found out that basically like Spock, his family, is alive again, and he's wanting to kind of preserve that, and he goes back out and goes to find his friend, and basically commits high disciplinary charges, but that just goes to show Kirk at that point didn't give him much of shit, and the rest of the crew was largely along for the ride. Let's talk about another good one, and that is Star Trek 4. Star Trek 4, and I'm blowing through these pretty quickly. Some of them are just really not noteworthy, and a little bit is I haven't been watching them for a while, which I've said many times, but it's also there's a lot to cover here, and I kind of want to just drop the major plot details for some of these in their individual episodes, but also some of them really just aren't that big of a deal. And as I said, all these movies aren't that great in some regards. I'm gonna really kick in with this with movie 4, because this is one I remember very well. It's pretty good, but it does have some serious issues. So the plot is, there is a giant probe heading into Federation space. It's heading to Earth, and it's knocking everything out. It's basically just jamming everything, and it literally is so powerful that anything that comes near it just loses all electricity. Finally gets to Earth, and it starts wreaking havoc on Earth. All kinds of storms start popping up. Power goes offline. Like, the Federation's in dire need. Like, the capital world for the Federation is under siege. And it's by the Federation, and all of its power can't do a damn thing to stop it. The plot largely revolves around that Spock realizes that the probe is trying to communicate underwater to a species that no longer exists in the 23rd century, and that would be humpback whales. And it's it literally is an eco movie for its day, right? If I remember right, this movie releases in 1986, and it has the message, right? It's just, save the whales, literally. It's funny, but I think it kind of does it right. It kind of gives you a world. It's like, hey, there's consequences to be said about, all this stuff. Because even if the Federation's largely a paradise, is that the steps to get there were not easy. They were not good. And you have certain things happen, like the death of whales, that isn't there. And of course, there's like this probe here that forces the issue. So they go back in time in the Klingon bird of prey to go get whales and figure out how to bring them back forward in time. And a lot of it's kind of shenanigans and hijinks about basically how they're going to do that. And there's one scene where they basically pass on the technology of transparent aluminum, or from Scotty, where he's trying to mess with the computer. I do remember that. But it doesn't all go well. Spock's kind of bringing himself back to life because he's kind of had to steal his memories back from McCoy, which he implanted in him. Walter Koenig, if I remember right, ends up getting seriously injured. They have to break into a hospital to help him out. They were basically going into a Navy base, and there's the whole sign. There's the whole thing there. A guy with a Russian accent goes around in downtown San Francisco, being like, "Where are the nuclear vessels?" Great theme for 1986 at the height of the Cold War. That's grade A comedy, at least for me at the time. Or, well, I wasn't alive then. But anyway, it's a pretty good comedy considering the context of the Cold War. But yeah, is that you have all this going on, and there's some hijinks where they're trying to figure out and make it all work. And they meet the old whale keeper, who is basically, in charge of the whales at an aquarium, or I think it is an aquarium. She's supposed to be responsible for them. They end up having some kind of thing go on with her. It's not romantic at all, at least not that I remember. But there's some hijinks with Spock and Kirk going around with her, trying to understand a world that is 300 years before them. And it kind of follows suit with her basically coming along for the trip. And they eventually go back, and she gets to kind of see the world 300 years down the road and all the her thing. And if I remember right, the reason they really bring her there is, one, she didn't have a place, and two, somebody actually needed to know what the whales are and what they do. And so they decided it would be okay to bring her out of time into their time. And so they do. And there's not much plot revolving around that, and I don't remember seeing her ever again. But it kind of wraps up with the ship takes off, and then it comes back to Earth after doing its slingshot maneuver, where it comes back to the future, and it crashes into the ocean. The whales get free after some scary moment there, and it ends with Kirk being charged with basically 14 counts of insubordination or something like that. And the Federation Council's just like, well, you did just save our ass. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore all but one, and we're going to use this to bust you back down to captain, because that's where you really belong anyway. And so it has a nice happy ending, and everyone goes off into the sunset, right? It's not a terrible movie by far. It's got a few things wrong with it. Just to go over some of the things that do bother me a little bit. McCoy doesn't really have any story to him at all. He's just kind of there for hijinks. Spock is a major thread of it, as he's kind of rediscovering himself, but there's nothing that they don't add on to him. Is that he doesn't struggle with emotions or anything like that, which was really underserved, unfortunately. I think that would have been good. And by the way, chat, you can definitely talk and help me out here. I do see you all hanging out there. But Kirk actually has quite a bit going on for him, particularly where he has to take responsibility there at the end. And there's a bit of a crescendo, but unfortunately, it just doesn't work out very well. In terms of, he doesn't really have any consequences. But when you just save the capital of the Federation, I guess we can let that slide, right? Again, most of the side characters don't really have much anything going. Uhura doesn't have much. Chekhov doesn't have much. Sulu doesn't have much. It's just a lot of the plot is missing for these characters. Like, they don't really have major character arcs. The biggest character arc for anyone is the lady, the whale catcher. She basically discovers that there's even, if you will, a bigger world than herself. Or you know what? Forget that. Chat, you all can shut up. You are not welcome here. It's good to see you at Low-Key Methods. Good to see you again. Anyway, so, yeah, her character, she has a little bit of a character arc, but it really doesn't even get explored all that much. And that's really my big problem with movie 4. It's more symbolic and about the message of, like, a little bit of environmentalism and save the whales than it is exploring these characters. And that's a lot of the Star Trek movies in a nutshell, is they don't explore the characters all that much. We're going to get to some that do, but we're not quite there yet. And so, if I may readjust my legs here for a second. Much better, much better. Okay, so, movie Soar's not bad. It's got a decent plot. I just don't like how the characters are not really expanded upon. It doesn't really ask any major questions. It doesn't really make you think. And we can talk about all of these movies so far as having done that. Now we're going to get to a real turd. And I'm just going to gloss this one over and say Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, is absolutely terrible. I don't remember much about it, but I remember it's just it's memes and gimmicks, and the plot is ridiculous. And it's really summed up with the quote that the movie's famous for. What does God need with a starship? And that's kind of the plot in a nutshell, is that it gets ridiculous. And it also kind of breaks the lore for the universe a little bit, where they go to the center of the galaxy, which takes, way hell a long time. They shouldn't have been able to do it at all. But hey, we're just going to forget that, right? Let's get to probably now the best of the Star Trek movies, and that is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Quite a bit of plot here. And I watch this movie every now and again because I do believe it is the best of the Star Trek movies. And we're going to talk about a little bit why here, but we'll also save it for the we'll save it for its own individual video. What I will say is this: the plot largely is that Sulu has his own ship now, the Excelsior. He's just doing a cruise, and then all of a sudden, big shockwave comes in. Oh crap! Everyone's freaking out. What's going on? Well, one of the moons next to Kronos on the Klingon home system has exploded, and that is their primary source of dilithium. And basically the plot opens up with the subtext of it's the end of the era. The Klingons cannot survive what's going on. And ironically enough, this movie, if I remember correctly, is released in 1991 as the Soviet Union is falling apart. It might be 92. But there's an extreme parallel here between the ending of the era and wow, my hair is ridiculous. Anyway, the ending of the era and basically coming to terms with enemies that you once had that can no longer keep up the fight, and you have to find a new relationship to work with, because basically the Federation wins the little Federation Klingon Cold War, and they open this up with they're dying. We're gonna have to do that, and then this is a really good movie, actually. Or not a really good movie. It's a good one. Really good might be stretching it, but there's character growth. There's important things here, and I don't know where to start. Kirk has a massive amount of character development and growth and change in this movie. Spock's a little bit there. It revolves around more of his relationships with another Vulcan, which I cannot remember her name, but she ends up being basically part of a cult, or not a cult, but a cabal of people that are trying to basically get the Klingons and the Federation to go to a full-out war, because they didn't want change. And so plot. Klingons are going to crap, and there's supposed to be peace talks. The Enterprise is supposed to, escort the ship to Earth. On the way there, the ship is attacked, and it looks like the Enterprise fired upon her and killed the High Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. It doesn't look good, and after a while, Kirk and McCoy get basically arrested by the Klingons. They get thrown onto basically a prison planet where they're basically sentenced to die. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on in the movie. I'm skipping over a lot. We'll definitely get into it on its individual episode, and I apologize for that, but Kirk and McCoy escape with the help of Spock and a little bit of other stuff. And they have to go not only prove their good worth, but they have to out this cabal that they've realized is starting to be a thing. Because, as an example, what happens was that optically it looked like that the Enterprise had fired on this ship, and they, like in their computer logs it says they had fired 2 torpedoes, but they did a full account and they actually have all of their torpedoes, and so there's like, what the hell? And they realize that they have saboteurs on the ship. And they have people who are part of this. And they eventually find them, and they find out who is, largely related. The Vulcan, obviously, is there. Spock does a mind meld, figures out so many more names. And that's basically where they're heading off. And, of course, the movie ends with the climax of the Peace Summit, where the Chancellor's daughter is taking his place, and she's trying to carry on her father's work. And it comes to a head where there's people in the procession that are actually part of the cabal, and it's weird because you have Federation and Starfleet officers, and it's implied the Romulans are actually there as well too, trying to keep this peace conference from happening. And it all comes to a head where the surprise spoiler is that they have a Klingon bird of prey that can fire while cloaked. And it can just go around and shoot things while cloaked, but there's some, issues with it, which is exploited. I won't tell you how that happens, but they eventually figure out a workaround to it. They destroy the bird of prey. They go down at the nick of time, right before the president of the Federation is assassinated. Kirk jumps in and, knocks him down, and the laser's there, and then Scotty shoots him. Very action-oriented. But I want to tag in a little bit of the plot here about the characters, because this movie actually explores their characters very well, and particularly Kirk. So the Klingons in movie 2 kill Kirk's son, not actually Khan, and I don't remember exactly when and how that happens, but they kill him. If I remember right, they stab him with a knife. But he's got a hatred for Klingons. He doesn't like them. He's basically, most of his military career, Starfleet career, they've been either at war, in a shooting match, or dealing with Klingons the entire time he's been around. He has a prejudice. He has a bias. He has to, he does not like them. And he literally tells Spock during the meeting in the early part of the movie about the Federation's going to, kind of help bring about peace talks. Don't trust them. Don't disarm. Go get rid of the, he can't, he doesn't want to do it at all. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to have an era of peace. He doesn't trust Klingons. He doesn't like them. But also, he can't really face himself to move on. And he, through one way or another, will kind of go through a little bit of a journey. And it's not really shown as much as kind of said in the dialogue between Kirk and Spock about what he's doing. And basically it's part of the cabal that kind of wakens him up to this, and also the trial, is that the line, his own personal log, is used against him, and he realizes that he has a hatred for the Klingons because of the things that they've done, and he's blinded by it. He cannot see a world better than what he has because of the hate that he has for Klingons. And so it holds him back from exploring the possibility of something greater, of a better possible future. And this is a wonderful message to communicate. And it actually is why it is titled The Undiscovered Country, is that it's kind of a thing that Q will talk about later in Star Trek TNG, but the experience of humanity and in humanism, and something that Gene Roddenberry actually really tried to point out, is that the journey itself is what makes it all worth it. It is exploring who we are and what possibilities that may be is basically in a nutshell, what Star Trek is trying to communicate. And I'm going to paraphrase the closing lines from Q and TNG just because it kind of communicates the same message but in a different way. It's not about charting stars and studying nebula. It's about exploring the unknown possibilities of existence. And that is what this movie is largely kind of about, is that there is an opportunity to make something greater than what you have, to change and grow and to basically have a new era. And it deals with people wanting to hold on to the past, of past hatreds and past differences and past indifferences. And honestly, in some ways, if you're talking more on like the social climate today, like where the rubber meets the road, not geopolitically, but actually just at home, with all the people, with all the peoples that we have today, where there's a lot of strife and animosity between political factions and class group and race groups and all these other things. This would be a movie that would touch even to this day in some regards. Is that I'm sorry, I'm going to get political for just a second here, and I apologize. But one of the things I talk about in Mask Off is that I do believe that people are, beyond the fact that they're angry and we have serious issues and how we talk to each other, is that people are hurt. People are upset that they feel like life hasn't treated them in the way that they wanted to, and that is whether you're white or black or rich or poor. There's a lot of people that are very upset with our community and our society and the systems and the way that they are. And I just firmly believe that people don't know how to process that, and we're not open and honest about that at all. I've said this before, and as a meme, is that I believe people really need to kind of open up and be like, look, we're hurt, and we need to cry, and we need to be there for each other to some degree. I'm not going to say we're all going to sing Kumbaya by any means, but we need to be honest. And that there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hurt, and there's a lot of animosity among our society. And if we can't address that, we're just going to go down the hate ship. And so Star Trek 6, one of the best movies that is in the Star Trek universe. And actually, no, I think it is the best. Overall, it's got more character development than almost any of the others. Some of the later ones do a little bit more character development, but they still skirt away from that a little bit too much. It's got quite a bit of action. It's got a really good plot. It's kind of a mystery drama hybrid plot together. It's got a little bit of everything, and it balances it out really well. I would say the biggest problem with it is that more of the characters aren't explored. This is largely just Kirk and Sulu's movie. And basically it's just showing that Sulu has grown and come of age. He's the captain now of his own ship. And he's doing his own thing. But it's a nice send-off. I do like the signing ending credits, though. That's really nice. So I'm gonna put away movie 6, because it's good, but I'll talk about it all day if I wanted to. So let's do 7. Star Trek Generations. They drop the numbers at this point in the titles, and they just do the names. But movie 7 is Star Trek Generations, and I don't like this movie. It's not bad though. That's the thing. It's not terrible by any means. It's actually one of the better odd number ones. Like probably number 2 of the odd number ones, if I remember right, 2 or 3. I'm not gonna really rate the odd number Star Trek movies, but basically the plot is they wanted to bridge old and new and pass the torch along. I didn't care for that. Well, honestly, you just should have made it a TNG movie. And I'm just going to say it right now. The best of both worlds, the ending episode for Star Trek The Next Generation would have been a fine movie in the place of this. And it communicated so much more than what they wanted to. And it literally actually has the same theme, generally, overall. Is the questions and decisions that you make in life reflect upon what you become later. Or who we decide to be. And that's actually really unfortunate. Now, I will give Generations credit We talked about Star Wars in the last episode, or in the last review, low key. But yeah, thank you very much. I'll give Generations something that All Good Things doesn't really do, and that is they explore through the viewpoint of Jean-Luc Picard way better his internal guilts and struggles and sacrifices that he's made to have his career. In All Good Things, it's largely reflected upon the crew and themselves, and Picard isn't really the subject. Well, in Generations, that's flipped around. Picard is the focal point, which works a lot better. Most of the other characters are side pieces outside of Data, which is... I'm getting trolled by chat. But anyway, excuse me. Data's going through a bit of his own growth because he's got the emotion chip, and it's active now, and he's trying to actually understand it and come to terms with it. And it doesn't go very well for him. There's a lot of gimmicks and laughs that are regarded around it and some different things. But he does have a little bit of growth, particularly towards the end where he realizes that he can cry tears of happiness when he finds his cat. They don't really sell it that well, honestly, but there's an attempt made, which is better than an attempt than nothing. But most of the characters are side characters. They're not nearly as explored as they are on All Good Things. And it's just weird because Picard and Data are the characters in All Good Things that are largely left aside, and it literally just flips in Generations. There's a bit of a thing with Kirk in him being there and him coming back in time, or not back in time, but forward in time, and it revolves around this thing called the Nexus, which basically the long story of the plot is that there's this guy. He's chasing what is an energy ribbon throughout space, and it allows you to get into this like limbo point in time where you can basically make your own timeline, as you will. And time has it has no teeth, if I remember the direct quote in the movie. He apparently was there at one point, and he's trying to get back because he decided that basically it's kind of paradise, if you will, in a nutshell. But he decides to leave because he didn't feel it was real, but then after living in the real world, he wants to go back. And eventually there's a thing that happens where Picard is gets into that, and he has to come to with real terms about the reality that he's in. Is that he's in this energy ribbon, he's in a world that he has kids and a wife. And a lot of the exploring of his character is that it opens up with his brother and his nephew dying in a fire. And he never got married. He devoted his life to Starfleet, and then he realizes that he's going to be the last Picard. He's going to be the last of his line, and there's a lot talking about. Good to see you, Osiris. There's a lot in this movie or in the series about how much he cares about his family and his legacy name. They have their own. Vineyard, which you actually see in one or two episodes in the show. And he's got a wine bottle or two he'll bust out during the show, Chateau Picard, and he's really proud of what his family did, even though he left that to go do his own thing. I identify with this very well because my folks are farmers. But to take this full circle, is that Picard has to reconcile the fact that he had to make sacrifices for what life he has. And he actually gets to see what his life would have been without that in the Nexus. And he decides that it's nice and wonderful, but basically to have it, there was a bad thing that really has to happen for the Nexus to come sweep him up, and he can't live with that. And he also convinces himself that world isn't real, and which it kind of is very much implied that it's not. And so he decides not to. He meets Kirk, and they basically go together to fight the bad guy. Chat's being fun with themselves, but it's not terrible. Like, Kirk actually has a little bit of that in his own self, that he made some choices there. He's in the Nexus, and Picard's talking to him about all the choices that he made, where he didn't marry this one woman, and he didn't spend more time at home. It juggles a little too much, and it doesn't really make the impact that it really should have. focusing on Kirk was probably a little too much. Picard was a great instrument in here. Talking about Data is really good, but it doesn't. Having Kirk there is a little bit too much because you have like competing star power and competing focus of the movie, in my opinion. But also, it's weird because if you would merge Generations and All Good Things, you'd almost have like the perfect movie and like one of the greatest things ever. It just doesn't quite hit that mark, and so a lot of the other characters are left off to the side and not explored. And Picard does kind of Picard basically has a nice little thing there at the end. And it largely deals with how we perceive time. If I remember right, it's a reply to the antagonist. Time has no teeth. It's a predator, because his whole thing is time is a predator. It stalks us our lives. And what Picard says, literally like the last line of the show or of the movie before going away, is, "I believe time is a companion that goes with us on a journey to cherish every moment because it'll never come again." And that actually has a really good meaning. My heartstrings get torn up, and I will watch the ending of that movie anytime that I'm really like struggling and I'm going through like some kind of loss or like really big struggle, because it resonates with me. Is that whether it's your trauma that you're going through, or your heartbreak that you're going through, or all the bad things that you're going through in your life, is that sometimes, we can talk about if they'll pass or not, but what it largely is that it reminds you to cherish even the bad times, because it makes the good times worthwhile, and you have a life to live, and it's very much rewarding to you when you basically have everything full circle. You have it all encompassed. That you have to figure out if your choices that you've made is worthwhile, and what you've done, did it matter to you? Was it worth it all in the end? And did you take the time that you had to yourself very well? This movie, it's not a bad movie. I'm not gonna say it's a great movie at all, but it's it is pretty good. So I'm gonna largely leave it out there with Generations. It fails in some major ways. And actually, here, I'll hit the big one, just so everyone knows. The big problem with Generations is actually the Nexus itself, because it gives Picard the ability to control time for at least one moment, so he can go anywhere, to any point in time where he can. And so where he chooses to come out in time doesn't make really any damn sense. And so I'll leave it there. Is that the movie kind of breaks itself because it basically gives you damn near demigod powers for a minute. Or it gives Picard that. And it kind of comes apart plot-wise because of it. Let's talk about one of the people's favorites. I'm actually not a huge fan of this one either. It's okay, but I think this one's quite a bit underserved and a little bit overhyped. This is Star Trek VIII, otherwise known as Star Trek First Contact. It's very much a good action movie, and it does explore some big themes. But honestly, it's weird because the protagonist, or if you will, the main plot, is actually not around any of the Star Trek crew. It's around Zefram Cochrane. He is a degenerate by the 24th century standards. He is a alcoholic womanizer, barely has his life in order, and his only one thing is that he's trying to build the ship that can go faster in light. And he even says it in the movie. And it's just like, why I built this ship? Money. I wanted mansions and women and all this other stuff. And he has to reconcile because of what the Enterprise crew tells him going back in time. And the plot is basically the Borg come to attack Earth, try to assimilate it. They fail. They go back in time, like right there at Earth. The Enterprise follows them, and they try to stop humanity from achieving warp speed travel. They almost succeed, but they meet the inventor of warp speed, or the human inventor of warp speed travel, and they realize, the hero of the past isn't really the hero of the past to some degree. Never meet your heroes, but also what it really is, and what it kind of talks about, though, particularly with the meaning of the plot, is that he will become someone greater. It's basically, he kind of stumbles into this, is that in the process of chasing this dream, even for vanity's sake and for money and wealth and power, is that he opens up the door for humanity that people never thought possible. And I think Troy says it best. It's like, within 50 years, war, poverty, and disease will largely be gone from humanity because of this. And that, I'll talk to you guys about that in a second. Sounds like my kind of guy. No, like, he's very human, very flawed. And you don't really see his character transform, except maybe a little bit at the very end, where he realizes that, wow, you know, he meets the Vulcans at the very end of the movie, and he recognizes that he's opened up a whole new door, not only for himself, but for humanity. And you kind of are left with this idea that, you know, he's going to go on a journey to become the man that he's remembered as in the future. And I just want to give a quick shout out to one of my favorite lines in all of Star Trek, and I believe Riker is quoting Cochrane what he says 10 years before it actually says it. If I remember right, the quote goes this: Don't worry about being a great man, just be a man, and let history make its own judgments." And I think that's actually a really good that is a really good quote for particularly, you know, people today, is that everyone's so worried about, you know, doing the right thing, virtue signaling, all this other crap. You know, sometimes you're human, and you need to try to just do the best that you can whether each and every day or each and every week or each and every month, what have you. And you just, you know, do a little bit there, and then if you kind of keep with it, and this is one of my, you know, ideologies personally, you know, of like personal responsibility and reliance and, you know, being your own man, if you will. You will more likely in the experience in the attempt of trying to become more of what you are, or, you know, chasing your dreams, is that you will open more doors for you than you will have just sitting still. And I think that's what that movie tries to communicate. I don't think it quite does that very well. But that's where it goes. So what's wrong with First Contact? Well, the meaning and the plot's there, but a lot of the plot is a lot of hijinks. It doesn't really make sense. You got the Borg going around, and it's weird because it's like the movie's schizophrenic or bipolar. And I'm not saying that to insult anybody. I have bipolar disorder, actually, personally. It's that it goes from on the ground on Earth talking about Cochrane and basically his understanding that he's going to be somebody, but not the person that he thought he was going to be. While up in space, it's space horror, it's science horror, and it could have been really good, but it's. I'm not going to say it's tone deaf, or I'm not going to say like the tone shifts are bad. You can do a bit of both, but I don't think it handles it that well. Something uplifting in a horror movie, just I don't think jives that well. And I'll put it this way: I think science horror is in a great genre. Putting sci-fi horror together is wonderful. And I always said that science fiction is a great tool for philosophy. But I don't think that particular uplifting message was what that movie really should have been going for on the horror side of it. And that's actually getting into the other plot point. This movie is a little bit kind of an extenuation of Seven with Data, where Data is exploring humanity, and the Borg actually are able to do that in certain ways. They give him artificial skin. They can basically turn his emotion shit back on. And he kind of flirts with the Borg Queen or whatever. Like there's this weird kind of like I don't know, like romantic subplot kind of thing going on where she's trying to seduce him into like what she wants him to do. But it kind of all goes to part, and he just, you know, I'm not going to say swindles, but deceives her. And it's literally Data's day that basically everything ends up turning out correct in the end. I don't think it's done well. And what his whole like meaning and character plot is that he wants to be something more as well, but he wants to be human when he's this android, artificial intelligence. And he doesn't really know how to do that, but the Borg are actually able to get him closer to that, and he has to reconcile with a little bit of what he wants to be, because they're enablers, if you will. I don't think this plot's handled very well. because the meaning in that about, you're going to have to make sacrifices along the way and things aren't always going to come out very well works really good with the science horror aspect. But it doesn't really work in the greater theme of the movie, and they don't really focus on him enough to convey, personally, like, show me the journey of him actually having to struggle with that decision. And in fact, they kind of make a mockery of it at the end. It's like, it was a tempting offer. Oh? And it's like, yeah, like 0.23 seconds or something like that is how long I considered it. For an android, that's eternity. It's cute, it's cheesy, but it's more of a tell, don't show, or tell and not show kind of thing. And if you're gonna really get into people's heartstrings, you can tell, but you have to do it in the right way. You have to, like, explore people's journeys, like how the conversation between Kirk and Spock in movie 6 is a great way of telling and showing in a way that conveys emotion. And what happens with Data and the Queen really doesn't. And so this is why I'm actually not a really big fan of this movie, is that it really tries. It actually does try to be something good, but it's like a uplifting science, action, and horror adventure movie all in one go. And it seems like it's a little bit too multi-vectored. It doesn't really try to hit what it was wanting to do very well. So just to get with Osiris, Star Trek does a brilliant job of commenting on the human experience. I absolutely agree. And this is one of the big reasons why I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, but also getting into Star Wars and a lot of sci-fi, is that it's a philosophical conduit. And one of the big things that I do like about Star Trek as a whole is that a lot of the some of the movies, and particularly the shows, really try to emphasize what the human experience is. It is a show based around the principles of humanism and exploring the human condition. And while I'm not a staunch humanist in my philosophy, I do have a lot of respect for a lot of these ideas and ideals. They're not something to be excuse me. Something I ate earlier is not really agreeing with me. It's not something to be scoffed at by any measure. Not any measure at all. And so it's a good time. So that's movie 8. It's generally like the best liked of the TNG movies. I'm not gonna say it's. I think it is one of the better ones in some regards. It's just not that good. And again, I'm going to keep saying that a lot. A lot of these movies just aren't that good. They're missing, usually they're just missing something. They're missing a good antagonist. They're missing a really good plot thread. Yeah. And hell, I didn't even talk about Shang and Star Trek 6. We'll hit that in his own, in that particular movie. I'm sorry. I'm gonna hype beast Star Trek 6. I do believe it's the best of any of the Star Trek movies. So next is Star Trek 9 or Star Trek Insurrection, and it's pretty good. No, I'm sorry, it's not pretty good. It's actually kind of crap. The trailer was better than the damn movie, and I hate that. But the trailer kind of basically instigates that there was going to be a civil war within the Federation, or that the Federation was going to tear itself apart over the duties and responsibilities of what the Federation found right, the ethics, and that would have been the theory there is great, and it's explored in a couple episodes in the TV series there and again, and actually we'll hit this in Star Trek Into Darkness actually too. But what it ends up being is that more or less a corrupt admiral is trying to relocate a village of 600 people, and he's getting together with another alien race. Plot twist, ends up being a splinter group from the race on the planet because they want to harvest the radiation from the rings of this planet, which has amazing healing properties. Basically, it lets you de-age and keeps you aged at relatively in the prime of your life, somewhere between 20 and 50. Some guys look a little older, but just whatever your prime was, it largely keeps you aged in that at all times. And some of these people end up being 300 years old, plot wise. Anyway, and so the whole thing is, Picard, because of something that happens to Data, they go and investigate, they find out what's going on, and they have to, be the heroes and save the day. It's a little cliche, and there's supposed to be a theme with what's going on, and everyone tries to get a little focus, and that's not a bad thing at all. Each character has a moment of what's going on. Worf is getting younger. He's getting more impulsive, and he actually has to really struggle with maintaining control. Riker and Troy start flirting again, and they kind of rekindle the relationship that they had way back when, even before the show begins. That's kind of emphasized during the show. I can't remember Beverly's arc, but everyone has something to do in this movie. It actually is really good at the plot of keeping everybody busy and doing something, and at least touches on exploring their characters a little bit more. It doesn't really put it home, though. There's no like great journey for any of the characters overall that I can remember. There's a bit of a romantic thing that goes on between Picard and the one of the ladies that he meets on the planet, but it's like she's married, and it's a little bit weird, complete and kind of undersold, and just it doesn't really emphasize what they're trying to get at. And to be honest, just to show you what I'm talking about, is I don't remember what they were trying to get at. It's been a while since I've watched this movie, but it doesn't really sell. And getting into that, the villain, it's got really two villains. It's got the Admiral Daughtery, which is the basically the Federation villain, but also the alien, was it Raho or something like that? It's basically, in a nutshell, it's a bit of a the movie's supposed to make you think about like the resettlement of Indians, I think, in a nutshell. But the problem is, unironically enough, is that there's a TNG episode in season 7 that kind of does it way better, and it only does it in an hour. Sorry, details, but it just, if I remember right, there was a review I even watched that said that. Now that I think about it, but it's just literally there's an hour-long episode or 40 minutes runtime episode that does more justice to that kind of issue than the movie, and the movie just doesn't really get into the characters in a massive way that validates them, whether it's the antagonists or the heroes. It just doesn't sell them all. Just final note, I've said it, I'm just going to finish it off with that, is that it's really, the plot's good that it gives everybody something to do. Like, no one seems underutilized from what I remember. Like, everyone has something to do and is involved in the plot. Like, everyone partakes, but on the other side of that is no one really gets the spotlight enough, and no one really is explored deeply enough that it really makes for an emotionally impacting movie or very memorable movie. So we're gonna move on. Star Trek 10, otherwise known as Star Trek Nemesis. Okay, we're definitely getting towards the end of this, and we're at 52 minutes. So, I didn't think I'd actually make this one last longer than the Star Wars one, but here we are. Nemesis it tries. It really does try, but it doesn't succeed either. It's okay. So, plot is Praetor is assassinated of the Romulan Star Empire. He's basically the emperor, or the consul, actually, is the word they should have used. But he's the ruler of the Romulan Star Empire. He is killed, and so along with most of the Romulans in it. A new guy comes to power. His name is Shinzon. Oh, surprise twist! It's a clone of Jean-Luc Picard, who's 30 years younger, played by the awesome Tom Hardy. There is a lot that this movie... this movie tries really hard to really be something. It really does. And it's weird because it just doesn't succeed with it. What it is, and maybe it's because it beats the drum a little bit too much more, is that Picard looks in the mirror. Shinzon, which is Picard's clone, they have the same blood. They have completely different life experiences. And that basically is what the movie tries to explore, is that they have different life experiences. And how much does that actually make? If you were born into poverty, if you were born into harsh conditions, would that make you a better person? Would it make you a worse person? Would it make you jaded and angry? Or would it make you stronger and understanding that the prosperity in your life, it makes it all the worthwhile? And there's the really good line here is that Picard is looking at his clone, and he's like, and Shinzon's kind of like showed his true plan. And it's just like, Captain Jean-Luc Picard of Earth and Shinzon of Remus could never destroy the population of an entire planet. He's better than that. And it's basically like a reconciling of like the great good or bad that people can do is that Picard is a hero of the Federation, has saved humanity a number of times. Shinzon's out to destroy it. He's literally, it's implied and basically shown throughout the movie that he is willing to kill the population of Earth and cripple the Federation. The problem is that it's not really explored why he wants to do that, and which really undersells the character quite a bit. I guess it's kind of shown that it's implied that he's angry. He just kind of wants to take it out on everybody, but it's not really shown, and it's not really like communicated, and that's where this movie really kind of comes apart. Shinzon doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand like he's jaded, and he comes through a life experience that is very hard, very brutal. It's made him stronger, kind of strong as a result, but it just basically makes him off as like this power mad psychopath. And it doesn't even sell it that well. Is that you don't really understand, like, all right, if you craze power, you're not going to go on a suicide mission to wipe out humanity. Like, just the character doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's largely just, the character is literally written there just to be a complete and absolute foil to Picard. And it actually is, I'm not going to say it's poor writing, bad writing, lazy writing. It's just, it doesn't do what it needs to do. Is that, the impetus for Shinzon doesn't commute in the way that it needs to. He's not the character that he really needs to be the foil for Picard, and it kind of goes to hell, and it drags this movie down as a whole. Picard's really tried to explore. They try to explore him very well, and that is the saving grace of this movie, is that Picard does have to recognize that basically for any good or bad that he could have done in his life, there's an equal and opposite, right? So being the savior, literally a guy with the same blood, the same brain as him, can destroy planets. And there's some parallels between the two characters that they feed off of each other, and there's a little bit of an age and experience from Picard that Shinzon doesn't have, and there's some communication there that happens and plot element that happens, but it doesn't quite work the way that I think it needs to, and it doesn't communicate that. And I apologize if I'm again repeating myself, but you'll find me doing that quite a bit when it comes to these things, because this isn't scripted. It's just monologuing from my head. It's more of a rant into the void. None of the side characters really have anything going on. Like, there's a little bit of like a romance thing between Riker and Troy to finish it off because they're married now. But it's just, everyone's underserved, not explored, and it just ends with Data dying. There's a deleted scene that really makes Data into a good character, and that actually really helps the movie, but it wasn't in the movie. It doesn't do itself justice, and it just makes me upset because the movie really actually tries. Like, there was effort in this movie. It just, this is my problem with the executive producing team and the writing team of like the Rick Berman, Brandon Braga era. I just don't think they were good writers. I don't think they ever have been that great of writers, honestly. And that's funny because they wrote TNG, but I think that's a lot of the other writers being involved that really like sell the show, honestly. Fontaine, if I remember right, her name, helps out with the show. But I'm going to table that. We're going to get into basically the rebooted ones, and we'll try to wrap this up. We have Star Trek. Just Star Trek from 2009 is the reboot with Chris Pine as Captain Kirk, and a whole new, basically it's a rebooted thing of the original series. It's a fun movie. And it actually explores the characters relatively well. I'm not a big fan of like J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, but for what this movie is, it is one of the better Star Trek movies. It's a little bit overly actionary. The lens flare is annoying, and Nero is kind of a bad villain. He's an angry villain. He wants to get revenge or whatever, and it doesn't make a lot of sense personally. Like, he could save Romulus. Just by the fact that he's sent back into time. He's got this really powerful ship. He's sent back in time and literally just be like, hey, Romulans, like, we're going to help you be the badasses. And, I'm going to save my wife and the future me and all this other stuff. And he just, the plot doesn't really make a lot of sense in that regard and kind of goes to crap for there. But for what it does do is that it tries to explore Kirk's relationship with Spock and who these characters are. And actually, I would say the protagonist in this movie isn't Kirk, it's Spock. Or if it is Kirk, well, it largely is kind of built around him as the point of view character. It doesn't really do him a lot of justice. He's basically the whole thing. Kirk's storyline in this is that he's a troublemaking kid, but he has amazing potential. And basically somebody finally asks him, hey, make something of yourself. Be more, be greater. And he actually takes it upon himself. But he has issues with the Kobayashi Maru. He cheats the system. And as a spin versus the old one is that instead of getting points for accommodation for original thinking, for basically cheating, he's punished for it. And it literally is the fact that they're literally having like a court-martial or a tribunal or whatever, and all of a sudden Vulcan's under attack, and he's basically just barred. But through sheer plot contrivance, he ends up working his way to first officer to captain of the Enterprise, and he ends up being the great hero and saving the day. It's the plot's far-fetched as crap, and it's just, they try to explore Kirk's character. They try to, and they almost hit it. They do explore Spock's character pretty well, and the only problem I have with a lot of these movies is that they're rehashes of the same characters, and you should have just done a new series personally. But they try to explore the new Spock, and they do so pretty well. The bridge between having a human mother and a Vulcan father, what he views himself as, and where one part of him begins and another ends, and like bringing that into a cohesive whole. There's quite a bit explored into that. And I think they do that actually decently well. It doesn't like have a huge emotional impact like I think it really could have, but it actually is the best part of this movie. But yeah, the problem is this is one of my big problems with the writings of the J.J. Abrams and the Bad Robot Company is the plot's far-fetched. It doesn't really make sense. There's like plot holes and contrivances and stuff that just undersells me and kind of breaks the movie for me. And while I haven't watched Lost, I hear that's a lot of that too. And some of the other works I've seen JJ do is that he's got plot issues that I don't know what it is about JJ and his writing, but he just can't seem to, honestly, and I'm going to say this and be so demeaning to it, and I don't want to be, because look, he's an award-winning actor, he's made huge amounts of money. Well, on the other side, it's that if I'm just being blatantly honest, he seems to miss his plot issues is an understatement. Well, I'm glad you agree with that, Osiris. He doesn't seem to really get the basics of storytelling. And what I mean by that is that what he kind of does is that, and I've said that this is regarding a lot of directors now that I have serious issues with, is that it's more about the suspense, the spectacle, and the shock about what's going on in the movie instead about the characters themselves. And this is just, in a nutshell, my biggest issue with movies of the last 10 years, or even the last 15 years, is that they shifted from things way back when where it had to be more plot focused, and plot focused and particularly character focused, and it goes more about, wowing your audience with the spectacle and the shock and the suspense of what's going on. Keep them on the edge of your seat, that kind of action. It sets up a great plot and then just entangles it. Well, yeah, I don't want to turn the show into director's beef with JJ, because I think he does some great work. I really do, but I don't like when he touches some plot elements. I see a continuous pattern here, and I don't like where it goes. But let's finish this out real quick, because we got 2 movies left and then we're done. Star Trek Into Darkness, actually the best of the reboots by far. It's not really good, but it's close. It explores characters, like three major characters get explored. Kirk gets explored, Spock gets explored, and Khan gets explored. And actually, I'm going to piss off a lot of Trekkies with this, but it does better for these characters are better character-wise than the Wrath of Khan is that it actually explores all three of these characters way better, where like really shows off who they are and why they're doing what they're doing and how they feel about everything. So there's there's plots. There's two plots. One is the general plot of Admiral Marcus is doing the old I'm an admiral who's going to militarize Starfleet and go kick the ass of the Klingons and all these other people. Something we've seen in Star Trek in the show again a couple of times, right? And it goes to one of the movies that we were talking about earlier about like trying to militarize Starfleet and make it redirect what the role of the Federation and Starfleet is. And that definitely is hit here once again. Not to say it's a bad plot, it's a little overused, but again, it doesn't really sell it that well. It's just basically he is in charge of, he gets control of Section 31, spoilers. But it ties in a lot of nice things, but it's more Easter eggy than it is selling me on the idea that like what it kind of should have been is a little bit more like Admiral Pressman from the episode The Pegasus, where you actively have high-ranking brass. And Deep Space Nine does this too with the one Admiral Blake, I think his name was, where you have people that are under duress, under stress, and they want a more militarized, efficient, effective Starfleet that is basically a military force, not a peacekeeping exploration force. And then Marcus has this going on for him in this movie as well. They don't really sell it that well because it's largely just him, and you kind of get the idea that he's on his own, and he's just like the offshoot of a branch of what's going on here. Not to say the character's bad, and you kind of understand like what he's getting after, but they don't really explore that. They don't really show that the Federation is under duress and that these this extreme call to action, if you will, and that's how it's kind of marketed, is warranted and is justified. And that's actually probably the biggest problem with the movie as far as the antagonist being Marcus, is that it just doesn't sell his motivation at all. Going into Khan is great. Benedict Cumberbatch is a great actor, but also is that the plot does focus around him. He's basically a man out of time, but he's a super warrior from the past. Doesn't really need to explore that. What it explores is the fact of why he's brought it up, and like Marcus uses his own crew against him and his family, and you know it explores that he's willing to do anything and everything, and he realizes that all these things are going on. It ends up being his own undoing too. Is that Spock, you know, spoilers, but Spock uses his own desires against him. That actually ends up bringing more or less his downfall, and then of course there's the final climax where that all kind of wraps up. Spock is explored, and actually it's through Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan that he is explored well, because Spock at the beginning of the movie doesn't want to break rules. He actually gets Kirk in trouble, to where he gets court-martialed and loses his ship. And it's just like, oh wow, you know, it's just bad things happen. But of course, circumstances happen. Kirk flies the Enterprise off into the Wall Blue Yonder for the plot, and Spock kind of has to come full circle to where he has to accept that, you know, rules are rules, but there's times where you have to break rules. And I love the snide comment that Khan gives Spock, and that is, you know, you couldn't even break a rule. How are you supposed to break bone? And it's a whole thing of like how the Federation's like way too peaceful and way too nice and rules oriented. I apologize. I'm going like full stutter mode, I guess. But I need a drink of water. Just what happens when we're an hour and 10 minutes, right? So his character's explored, and he does have like a full character arc where he breaks Khan's bone, or at least it's really implied by the optically that he breaks Khan's bone in the final fight. And it kind of shows that he's done, he's dispensing, and that is the part where, spoilers, Kirk dies. And it's literally a reverse of what we see in Star Trek 2. And a lot of people consider this a remake. But regardless if it's a remake or not, it's actually it's a decent movie. And it changes up things in a way that really works well. It actually has better character development and character exploration than The Wrath of Khan, dare I say. But yeah, the plot just is a little far-fetched. It's better than 2009. But, and it's better than Beyond. Holy crap. But yeah. Okay, so Kirk's story is, I gotta remember exactly what it is here, because I'm getting it confused with Star Trek Beyond's story. Somebody remind me, what is it? Oh, yeah. Kirk's story is that he's basically let power go to his head, right? And he takes extraordinary risks, and he gets away with it again and again. And then he doesn't. And that's like the battle with Khan and Marcus, where like he almost loses his ship and like everyone's about to die and he tries to take responsibility for it. He has to realize like, hey, I have to play a little bit safer and come to the understanding that these rules that Spock values so much is that he flaunts them all the time, and there's a reason those rules exist. And he pays the ultimate sacrifice. He actually dies. And it kind of demeans his character a little bit, actually, because he's resurrected with Khan's super blood. And that's actually probably like one of my biggest quips against any of the characters, that the consequences largely sidelined at the end, is that Kirk is brought back to life in the same movie, and it just it's unfortunate because he basically does have a full journey to be had. Okay, hit the last one real quick. This one won't take long. This is Star Trek Beyond. Almost everyone doesn't care for this movie. It's not as bad as Star Trek. It's not as bad as Star Trek: The Final Frontier, but it is pretty bad. And it sucks because this one does try quite a bit. I do like Kirk's character a lot and his journey. Basically, he's gotten bored of being captain. Everything's mundane, it's monotonous, and it's not what he really signed on for and what he's been famous for. Is that his life actually lacks excitement. And part of that's kind of a layover from the rules thing from the movie too. But what his whole thing was that he realizes kind of like original Kirk's one of his main storylines is that as long as you're in the chair, you can make a difference. You can be part of the action. But if you're sitting behind a desk, he was supposed to be promoted to admiral in that movie. You can't. Like, you have to be in the thick of it, and sometimes just waiting to be in the thick of it is what you have to do. And that's largely his storyline. It doesn't do very well. Crawl, which is the antagonist, is really underserved because you realize eventually like who he is, and that's a nice plot twist. But what it really is that his character is not really explored at all. Most of the characters just aren't explored. It's just the characters aren't really explored all that much. The plot is kind of verbose, far-fetched. It's got some nice little tidbits here. It tries, but it just doesn't hit the right notes, and it goes to crap. And so, in a nutshell, this movie just underutilized, undersold, and it kind of sucks. So, without further ado, at 1 hour and just coming up on 14 minutes, is that this has been the Star Trek movies with reviews with Tyberius D. I hope you liked this. I hope you enjoyed. If you want, definitely come check out. Follow me on Twitch, where you can find what I'm doing and you can interact in the chat. If you have comments and thoughts about what's going on and what I've said, definitely comments down below. We'll be getting into the TV shows at some point. We'll be getting into the individual movies. And if you want me to review anything, post up. Be like, hey, I want you to review your favorite movie or my favorite movie or whatever. A lot of things are coming down the pipe. I've got a whole list here, and I'll just kind of shout it out real quick. Just kind of the things I spitballed, and I'm going to be adding a few more things to it very soon. But just to kind of get you a whole thing of what will be coming up, possibly coming up. We still have the Marvel Infinity Saga. I definitely want to do a Doctor Who reboot. I want to talk about the Star Trek TV shows in a nutshell, and then actually do each individual phases in each show at TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, the original series, all of this. And then maybe I don't want to do Picard or Lower Decks anytime soon. If you want me to do like a quick excerpt of it, I will do that just to like what I think of it so far. I need, and there's a lot of other things I can add in here. By the way, I really like the Orville. I won't review that until I'm convinced that the show is dead. They're just having production issues for season 3 from shifting to a carrier and COVID and all that. But a few other things I'll throw out there. Rogue One. My favorite movie is Inception. I'll be doing a review of that. So yeah, just throw me a bone. Let me know what you want to see and why you want to see it. Either comment down below, PM me on LinkedIn, Instagram. Well, I do have an Instagram, but that's whatever. PM me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. You can find me on the links down below. Drop a comment. Come join us on the Twitch. It'd be great. If you watch the film Jaws backwards, actually... wow. What is that comment? Alright, anyway. Without further ado, I have been Tyberius D with reviews with Tyberius D. I know that's a bit of a mouthful. We might have to work on that a little bit. Hopefully we can get some graphics coming up real quick about having an intro and an outro for the show and all those wonderful things. But I really hope you enjoyed this. If you like what I do, feel free to check out my other content on my other 2 YouTube channels or the podcasts themselves, or just see it all on Twitch. Is that I do geopolitics and I do Mask Off Conversations, which is basically me and Osiris and a few other people get together and talk to people about what's going on in their lives and serious issues, whether it's technological or political or sociological or any of that stuff. So I think I beat this horse deader in hell. It's been a great time, and I'll talk to you later. See you guys.